Cat. Just bring all the pets.
Show the cat. The cat will do the intro to the meeting. There we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, there we go. The date is August 31st. It is the last day in August. Is it technically the last day of summer? I don't think so in the Northern Hemisphere.
No, isn't that like the 22nd of September or something? I don't know.
Maybe. But welcome, everybody, to the Cloud Custodian community meeting. This is the community meeting that we have every 2 weeks. We started on a weekly cadence, and we're kind of trying to figure out what the best pace is here. But the kind of mission for this meeting is for us to get together as a community in a like slightly organized fashion, talk about what's happening in Cloud Custodian, and of course, give the community members an opportunity to raise things. If you have a PR or an issue and you prefer a more high bandwidth discussion, we kind of have this hour every 2 weeks to communicate in this kind of high bandwidth. If you have an idea you want to toss out to the community, that sort of things. And it helps us cover things like announcements and cool stuff that's happening in events. So we have an open agenda here. If first, before we get started, we do introductions. I don't think we have anyone here, but if you were new and wanted to introduce yourself, this will be the time to do so. Anybody want to say hello to the internet while we're here, or do we move on? From looking at the names, I think everyone's been here before, so that's good. All right, moving on to the agenda items. First, we have our regular weekly doc sprint sessions. This is when myself and Liz kind of on Fridays pick an hour, find something that we is annoying to us in the docs or somewhere in GitHub, and then attempt to do a fix. For this past week, we've been looking at moving the issue templates from the kind of old style GitHub. It's just a bunch of markdown and then the template, and then we ask users to fill it. GitHub now, of course, has GitHub Forms, which gives us a nicer user experience. So I've opened the pull request for that. I've had some people look at that. If you have opinions on that, please feel free to look at that. And I'm hoping to close that out after I get some more feedback from reviews there. Does anybody want or have an opinion on GitHub Forms for issues and whatnot? If you look at the PR, I'm trying to not make it so you have to fill out an entire Survey Monkey to file an issue. But it will be useful for us as far as making sure that we ask people what cloud provider they're on, for example. Anyone have comments here? That's what I like to hear. Nice and simple, no-brainer there. The second bit is as I've been doing documentation, pull requests, and things like that, kind of by default, the reviewer is Kapil. So I'd like to propose for us to have an @cloud-custodian/docs team in GitHub so that we can add more than one person there so it's not blocking on anyone. Does anyone have any opinions on this one?
I mean, that seems like a good call to me. Happy to jump in there if you're looking for members for that group. And also, since you've got that open PR, I can drop a link to my Custodian fork if anybody wants to see how those issue templates look live, if that's useful.
Yeah, that would be great. Drop that in chat or in the notes. Yeah, so people.
Yeah, I'll put it in chat and we can put it over there. I mean, that will not be an always live link.
Yeah, sure.
But for now, it will work.
I'll check out the forums here. That. All right. So I went ahead and added those links to the notes. Kapil, how should I do this at Custodian doc? Should I file an issue for you to create it, or?
So how do we do what?
Ask for the GitHub user group Cloud Custodian/doc. Should I just file an issue, or?
I think an issue is fine.
Okay.
Let's track it, and I'm going to drop the comments in.
Sure. So I'll put George to file an issue, and who wants to be in that group? Me, Liz, AJ. Any chance Carl made it today? No, I'll follow up with him. But of course, if anybody else wants to add to join the docs review team, just start reviewing doc PRs, and then after a few, we'll put you in there. We don't really have like a formal policy. Like if you come from Kubernetes, like you have to do X amount of PRs in order to be doing by a group. I think we're still small enough where we just kind of know you. And what do we think?
As far as
Or should we make a policy?
no, I'm happy adding whoever wants to participate in the group, be part of the group. Just from a reviewer perspective, you still need the maintainer bit flipped on the repo, which there's like about a dozen people out in the world. As far as people in this group right now, AJ, Wayne, Mandeep, I think you're an Emeraldus. So if you want to try to do another PR, then you can get back to active. FYI.
Yeah, sure.
So, and then Todd actually as well. As far as active committers that I see in this meeting.
Awesome. Boy, I said policy and you unmuted the fastest you've ever. You were like, whoa, wait. I feel you. All right. Anything else on docs and docs review? And as usual on Fridays, I'll usually announce on the Gitter about an hour before we go live. Hey, we're kind of looking at this issue or whatever, people to dive in. So if you want to join me and Liz, it's fine. We just hop on, kind of shoot the breeze, look at the docs, file issues on things we find, and try to think about ways how we can restructure things to make them look better. So any other comments?
Wait, George, did we have something for this Friday?
We did, but
brought
Kapil
something up.
Yeah, Kapil merged it yesterday.
Wasn't there something else in the docs we were talking about?
Let me see.
I can't remember now. I'm sorry. But yeah, if someone has come across something, like please let us know so that we can address it on Friday. If there's any part. I feel like there was something recently.
I think you're thinking about the two issues. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
There was a recent topic around documentation, which I just don't know that we have a good answer yet. And definitely would want to raise it for the broader group. Custodian has a bunch of server-side filters. Good luck trying to find out what they are, unless you're, source spelunking. All of those are both resource and source specific. So if you have any thoughts about how to do documentation on the server-side filtering, I think we should at least get an example of using it and exposing the fact that it exists into some form of narrative doc. But as far as getting to, I think the question would then be, how do we generate reference material for it on the generated docs? And right now that is still an opening question, just because all of those are implemented, so they have significant variation on implementation, which is not necessarily discoverable per se outside of source.
Got you. And when we get to those two issues, it'll be more clear how Kapil arrived to this conclusion. All right. Anything else? Docs wise. Okay, awesome. Moving on, that's really kind of the end of the formal agenda. If anyone has anything to add, I will leave you a space there. I'm going to take some time, however, to talk about Code as Governance Day. Governance Day.
Governance is code.
Governance. I mess this up every single. Governance as Code Day. I promise I'm not doing that on purpose.
No, I didn't.
And this is the day before KubeCon / Cloud Native Con. As we said before, I'm just going to repeat this every meeting. You can register now for the link there. The event is free to attend, whether you attend physically or virtually. And just a reminder, you don't have to have a KubeCon / Cloud Native Con ticket to attend, so you can click on that. And we are still looking we have a few spots left open for talks. So if you want to submit a CFP, I've got the link there in the notes as well. And Umair's been generous enough to extend the deadline to September 8th. I know some people are still kind of mulling in the prototyping stage and want some extra time to do that. So the deadline for talk submissions will be on September 8th. And then we'll give us a day to kind of organize and plan the schedule. And then on September 10th, we'll be publishing the schedule. So we're hoping to have a nice diverse set of content there for you to consume. Do we have any questions about that at all? And of course, if the KubeCon committee decides to not have the physical event, we will of course have the fallback to the virtual platform, which is what we've been using for our workshops anyway, and has been generally pretty good for us. So it won't be a problem for us to switch over to virtual. Anyone have any comments?
Yeah, and if you want to attend virtually or present virtually, that's fine too. Like even right now, we pretty much have all the presenters virtual. So again, if you're interested in a talk, just send us a note or let us know. I'll put in my email in there too, just if somebody else is interested.
Got you. And I did keep this in the notes.
Does it specify anywhere? I'm just looking in the event page that you don't have to, that talks are not required to be in person. Does it say anything about how they can be virtual as well or remote?
We can specify it, but we wrote it down like as a hybrid event is by default, but we can write it down too.
Yeah, I don't know if that might, it might help clear up like any confusion around that in case like some people have been hesitant to submit a talk because they don't want to have to be there in person.
Yeah, I think
might be helpful.
That'd be good clarification.
You look like you had something to say. Change your mind.
I did. Actually, I found the Reinforce just happened. I guess was it last week? Yeah, it was last week. And I just found the spot in the keynote that the HBO Max guy was talking about how they use Cloud Custodian to help them achieve remediation at scale.
That would be awesome. Could you toss a link to the video with a timestamp?
Yep.
If you can. Yeah, I'd like to put that in the notes. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's cool.
I'll drop that and get her.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Moving on. 1 second. I lost my place when I had to scroll. Let's go over the backlog here really quick. We don't expect progress in these all the time, so we'll just go right through them. Contributor guide, Liz. I know that generally speaking, every Friday we're looking at this, but anything going on your brain that's new this week?
Not yet for this. We have been just focusing on just the user documentation, but it might be interesting, I think, this Friday maybe to take a look at what we've got already existing in the contributor guide and see if there's something there. So I think, I'm going to give that to myself as a project to find something in there to work on this Friday while we still, it sounds like we might need to do a little bit of thinking about how we want to surface the stuff around filtering, right? And so in the meantime, taking a look at the contributor docs, I think would be a good thing to do this Friday.
Questions on that? Kapil, you had priority backlog for the cloud providers. I don't know if we have anything actionable on this one other than the usual document it better kind of thing. All right. AFK. Oh, that's you.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a great answer right now. If you were interested in contributing to a provider, generally speaking, we have tagged all the provider specific issues. There's a bunch on Azure and a couple on GCP. It just requires people with the right expertise that are interested in contributing doing so. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out and get her.
And enhancements feature process. I'm assuming that's still on hold because we haven't heard anything different.
Yeah, I don't know if we have an iteration on that yet. So no.
Got you. And probably the same with renaming master domain.
That one I am more interested in. I've been doing some more reading, and yeah, would like to get this done. Someone holding my feet to the fire, either publicly or privately on Gitter, and we'll try to get done before the next community meeting.
Yeah, that's why I left it in the backlog notes to force ourselves to do it. Any questions on that one? It seems pretty straightforward. Make Gitter easier. So I've been kind of on the side when I get a few minutes here investigating every single Matrix client that I can. There's a lot of movement in this space. So I don't really have anything to report other than I'm keeping track of all the web kind of chatty clients that we could be using on top. Element seems to be making a lot of progress here, but really nothing to report. And when I do, when the feature set kind of starts to match what we need, I'll probably start to take a more opinionated approach on the clients.
Just give a shout out publicly when they support threading.
Yes, yeah. So that's very interested. Element has got a bunch of funding, so it'll be interesting to see how they work on the web after that. So more to that in the future. That's more there to remind ourselves that we still need to fix our chat experience. We are due for release. We did that last 2 weeks ago. Did the conversations around PipX ever go anywhere? Is this another reminder to ourselves in the future?
We had a discussion about it. It
Yeah.
seemed like some folks were interested in trying it before we officially recommended it anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I think where we left off was I thought it was cool, and everybody else
Yeah,
ambivalent.
I don't think we set
I'm looking
ourselves
at
a
podcast.
deadline.
We
Yeah.
can remove this one then. That's
Okay.
That's okay.
So it's a great question, though.
Yeah.
I think on how do we improve install experiences? Like we have a lot of users who know nothing of Python, and we are either giving them a Docker experience, or we're forcing them to at least figure out how to do some Python. I think there are some interesting tools in the Python ecosystem that can produce self-contained binaries. Nupta, I'm probably butchering that name, seems to be one that seems to work okay, and potentially can produce a self-contained binary, can produce a binary that depends on system Python. I'm just wondering, like PipX is clearly one of the easier ways to do this, but still requires pip install pipx, pipx install this. Yes. So did you just tell me to install your tool by installing your tool? Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I think there's an open question on, are there reasonable options here that give people a self-contained binary download? And I think that's still worth exploring.
Do we officially support Brew? I don't know anything about Macs, so I was just wondering, since you brought up install experience, because we have a page on brew.sh.
We do. I don't know that it's been updated in ages, decades even. I forgot how we did that. I'd have to go through. Like, I think we actually have. Can't remember if we did it in their repo or in our repo. But there was an open issue. I don't know that we've updated that as a distribution channel to the extent that it exists.
Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't even know.
Yeah, there's a there's a couple of third parties that did it.
Yeah, I've got this URL. I'll toss it in chat here. This is what I found.
It's like NitroCode did it directly into core of Homebrew, and it's currently on a fairly old 15-month-old version. And I don't know that we've updated it.
So we brew install pipx and then pipx install Custodian. No, that's all fair though. I mean the Docker option too. I think at one point we talked about that that Docker was a more popular way of getting Custodian. That kind of surprised me. I just assumed people were pip installing it more. But yeah, maybe we surface Docker more.
Pip, I mean, looking at various download stats on pip and versus Docker, yeah, pip definitely is ahead by a little bit, but
Okay.
part of that just might be how we document the two.
Yeah,
So-
and there's also the whole Docker licensing changes with Docker. Some of that stuff that was coming out earlier today. So I don't know if that's gonna.
I didn't see any Docker licensing changes, but I did see a new Pro
Yeah.
version.
For large companies, if you're using Docker Desktop, they want you to pay. But I don't.
Well, I would prefer them doing that than rate limiting Docker Hub.
Why not both?
Well, the statistics might be a little misleading given usage patterns if people are more likely to do pip install Cloud Custodian and have that running for a lot longer than spinning up, shutting down.
Absolutely
containers.
agree. Like this is a
Yeah, it's fair. The stats are wonky to begin with.
I mean, this is just a classic OSS issue, and outside of doing phone home type of opt-in, opt-out semantics, like
Right.
the reality is you download the bits once, you cache them locally, be that a Docker hub or a PyPy download, and that's just the way of the world. Otherwise known as, how do you count? What are you measuring with open source?
Yeah.
But take the Kubernetes t-shirt, and thanks for the comment.
Sure. I can go switch to my stack shirt if you prefer.
Oh, well, I've got an Ubuntu t-shirt on, so nice baseball raglan. Yeah, I don't know that like we track download numbers, but like we clearly know they're not authoritative in any real fashion. I don't know that given the user population that we want to go to anything else as far as opt-in or opt-out stacks tracking from environments like that doesn't really feel nice and
Open sourcey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we, not coming from an OS 10 experience, but does us publishing natively into Brew, is that something we should consider thinking? Like, I don't know how
it
OS
is
10
something we
people-
should consider. We should so we probably were missing a piece of release automation that automatically we have I ran through the entire release, I guess, our last meeting, and it took like 15 minutes to publish the test PyPy, test all the packages, and then publish for the real and cut the release. We probably need a bit of automation to create a pull request into Brew's thing, GitHub repo to create the update itself. I think absent that, like I said, the existing version that's in there looks about 15 months old, so clearly lacking on the tracking.
Should I file an issue? Maybe see if there's a volunteer?
Sure. That's your code, I think. GitHub username, did the last one, or did the upstream push into Homebrew.
Okay.
And also helped us set up our Reddit forum, which may be more, I don't know if fans actually visited it recently, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth investigating. Maybe we know someone who's into this. I know that there is a lot of activity in Brew with open source packages, so surely someone out there might be interested. All right, anything else installation wise? And then we have this policy testing spec with Marco, who hasn't been able to attend in a while, so I'm going to table that unless anyone has new information. Boom. All right, I have 2 issues to review today from this week. Let me get those open. AJ, you were running lead on this.
Yes, and no, you're opening them. Yeah, these were 2 related because I think, and these were just, I mean, I should call out, I mentioned to the person who reported them that these were just really well done bug reports. So really well done, thorough, included all the context we needed to look into it. So that was great. That was really nice to see. Shout out to Robbie Demuth. And they're related. I think it looked like he had two going into them at the same time. It looked like, it looked like the first time he was looking at the snapshots, so looking at described snapshots, and found, this is the second one. So yeah, we can talk about this one first. That's cool.
I could go back. Sorry, which one do you want me to?
Let's go to the other one first,
Okay.
because it looked like that was the first one. So he's working in an account where they've got tons of EBS snapshots. It sounded like hundreds of thousands of them. And when they were it was trying to run a policy, and it was dying with a timeout or a rate limiting error in the middle of that while it was trying to pull back the snapshots. And he was digging into it on his side, looking to see where which API call it was coming from, tracing through the code. And he said, oh, it looks like this isn't, we're not paginating this response. It's just trying to pull back all the hundreds of thousands of snapshots in one call. And that's why we're hitting a timeout. That's why it's failing. And looking into it, it looked like you can, under the hood in Custodian, we do try to get a Boto3 paginator and use that to get responses in pages rather than pulling everything at once. But in the case of EBS snapshots, it won't paginate your response unless you tell it how many results you want back. Sometimes that just happens implicitly, but with EBS snapshots, it didn't. So it looks like we're going to have to add that. And there's a lot more context in there that we need to add an option to the enum spec. Kapil, if you've got any detail to add there.
It's a one-liner. I'll do it right now.
Ooh.
I would say the wrinkle that he identified there, and that's what I'm calling out in the last comment there, is that if we add that option, where it's a max results option, then we have to pull that out when we go to query individual snapshot IDs. Otherwise, providing explicit IDs in combination with max results will blow up. So we kind of
okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit surgical. Like, I think we can do it if we update the enum spec in the resource type and then kind of back out and get resources, but I don't know if that's the best way.
No, that's probably the right thing to do, is basically just custom code on the get resources and do the enum spec for the default.
Cool.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, that was that issue.
But and number
then,
2.
yeah, and so as you can read this issue and watch him falling into the rabbit hole of EBS snapshots. And as he was going through, he thought, well, we should be able to pull back fewer results in the first place if we're taking advantage of server-side filters rather than pulling back hundreds of thousands of snapshots and then running client-side tag filters. Can't we just ask the API, only give me snapshots with these tags set, so that we don't have to go through all those results locally?
Before we get off the paginator a bit into the server-side querying, it's worth us doing a investigation as far as other EC2 resources that have that same behavior. I suspect it's possible that, like, instances, AMIs, there's other things that potentially are running into this potentially hysterical reason type of behavior where they're just trying to keep API compatibility and it doesn't scale.
That is a good point. Yeah, let me take that. I'm okay jumping into that. Okay.
And what was the issue number for the pagination?
873.
Yep, you got it.
Sorry, 873?
6873. Let me toss the URL in the chat there for you, Kapil.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
All right, and this brings us. Oh, wait. Let's have Kapil consume for a second there, and then see if we're moving on.
All good.
All right.
Good. Cool.
All right.
Okay, so
6874.
back to 6874. So 6874 was, okay, there's an issue with pagination, but hopefully we won't have to deal with this anyway because we want to filter on the server side and not pull back as many resources in the first place.
Mhm.
And so he did what looked like a logical thing to do. We have a policy block for filters, and he was trying to add filters and thought that they would that Custodian would know to apply them server side where possible. And Kapil mentioned a bit about this earlier in the call, that the server side filters, there's not really a lot of consistency with those between different services, different APIs, and the way that Custodian defines support for them is very much like just per resource. And it's not really obvious to find that through the documentation. I think if it is documented, it's just a quick note here or there. If you're going to come across how to use server-side filters, it's through the query block of a policy, which has some overlap with the AWS config source, and you pretty much have to read the code today to understand how to use it. So in one of the comments on this 6874 issue, I do have an example policy that adapts some of his original policy to use some server-side filters.
This one right here.
And yeah, that one right there. And there's a link to the spec where Custodian defines which filters are acceptable, are valid in the schema. So I think this is useful. And Robbie commented back and said, "Oh, I didn't know you could do this," which is totally not his fault. we can surface this. So I'm hoping that this issue discussion is useful context for maybe a doc sprint call. I'm happy to jump in with some of that. I know we already talked about server-side filter docs earlier, but this is a really good example for where they can be useful.
For sure. So Liz,
I am
this is the
curious
issue
if
we're gonna-
anyone's has anyone on the call used the server-side filters with the query attribute on policy before?
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
not.
I mean,
Okay. I'm just curious.
I know a few people have used them. I've seen it come across, but only if you happen to read the code or know exactly what. If you had an existing like API call or CLI call and you wanted to replicate it in Custodian, so you just kind of search the code for where that shows up, and you say, "Oh, dang, look, I can do this in a query." But that's pretty gnarly.
I was wondering if anyone had any cool
like the only
that they've done.
Yeah, the only time people run into it is when they bang their head up against the wall and they go start splunking, or they come into Slack, Gitter, and ask, and someone who knows drives them in. Like it is very not discoverable.
Well, and I ran into this problem where I started using it, but then because we do all of our policies like inside of a code build run, right? So we have tons of different policies running. I actually stopped using it so that we could just pull all the data and then use Custodian's caching internally so that we had all of the resources and not a subset of them, right? And so it didn't actually help in the overall run. It's fine for individual policies. You're going to run one off, but when it's combined with all the other ones, like it wasn't useful to us.
That's a great caveat. Like anytime you do a server-side filter, it effectively caches all those resources in a separate cache key. So if you have differentials if you are doing server-side filtering variants across your policies, you may find that it's actually faster and more efficient from an API call perspective to remove them, which I think was part of the reason, justification, at least essentially at the time, to not document them outside of people needing to know about special cases. Good call. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's something we'll have to document if we do expose this stuff, is when it can bite you. And some of the, I mean, even in this case, they're looking for some questions about, is this tag present, or some high level attribute, but then for some of the more advanced stuff, doing value checking or conversions to dates and checking ages on things, that the best we can do is a presence filter through server side and then do the more advanced stuff locally. I guess that's it. I mean, that's all I've got for this, but But I do think it was a really interesting pair of issues.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do is once the video renders on YouTube, I'll leave a comment in the GitHub issue to kind of give them more of a here's where we're thinking kind of thing. All right. Anything else on this? All right, Liz, I guess we know what we're doing on Friday during the little doc thing. So
Yeah,
hopefully I didn't bite off more than I could chew.
Yeah, I was just taking notes on that. How interesting. Yeah, AJ, I'll have to sit with you, or whoever wants to hang out
Yeah,
with
we'll
me
have-
and dive into this a little bit more to make
Mhm.
sure I understand before then addressing it in the docs. So we'll plan on that.
For sure.
Sounds good. Yeah, and I
All
can
right.
imagine this taking a few whacks to get because it
Yeah.
is kind of a big topic and it varies by service and all that. So we may define it locally in EBS first or something.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
All right. And those were really the only two PR/issues I wanted to bring. Anybody have anything else burning on fire or anything they'd like to see? All right. Everything is perfect in GitHub land then. With that, we are 19 minutes early. I'm going to give you that time back. Thanks, everyone. Anyone got anything else? All right. Have a great day, everyone, and happy custodianing. Is that a word?
Thanks.
Sure.
You too.
Cheers, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.